had ever simply sat beside her.
The hall of the Frostborn court had never known silence quite like this. It was the kind of silence that pressed against your chest, cold, ancient, and laced with the faint hum of crystalline walls that had stood for 10,000 years. Sentinels in pale armor lined the corridor, their eyes fixed forward, their breath barely visible in the frozen air. They were soldiers of Queen Seraphine, the Ice Sovereign, ruler of the Etherean realm, and they had learned long ago that to blink too loudly in her presence was to invite ruin. At the far end of the hall, the Queen herself descended her throne steps. She was terrifying in the most beautiful way imaginable, silver-white braids coiled like frozen rivers down her back, her crown a lattice of diamond shards that caught the pale blue light and shattered it into 1,000 cold sparks. Her skin was luminous, almost translucent, as though the frost had decided to wear a woman's face. She was barely 19 in human years, yet she had ruled for decades, because in her world power did not age. It only hardened. Her generals whispered that she had never once smiled. Her courtiers believed she had no heart, only a glacier where one should be. Entire armies had turned and fled at the sight of her expression alone. To serve her was to walk barefoot on ice every single day. And today she had summoned a human. His name was Cale Dawnridge, and he walked into the Frostborn court the way most men walk into an execution. Chin up, jaw set, eyes tracking every exit. He was a war envoy from the southern human kingdoms, sent to negotiate safe passage through the Etherean mountain corridors. He wore dark leather armor etched with old battle marks, a soldier's build, a diplomat's measured tongue, and the kind of weathered face that suggested he had survived things that should have killed him. He stopped 10 feet from the Queen and did not bow. The entire court held its breath. Seraphine looked at him the way she looked at everything, with complete, devastating calm. "You were expected yesterday," she said. "The blizzard your sentinels sent nearly buried our convoy alive," Cale replied. "I took that as a delay, not a cancellation." Someone in the court actually gasped. The Queen's pale eyes studied him for a long moment. Then, without a word, she turned and walked back toward the dais. "Follow me," she said. "We will speak privately." What followed was 3 hours of the most grueling negotiation Cale had ever endured. Not because she was unreasonable, but because she was precise. Every word he offered, she weighed. Every concession he proposed, she dissected. She did not raise her voice. She did not threaten. She simply made it very clear that she understood every angle of every argument before he had finished making it. He had faced warlords, kings, and monsters. None had exhausted him like this. By the time the talks concluded, a fragile agreement, but an agreement nonetheless, the pale light outside had deepened to the strange silver dusk of the Etherean night. Cale was shown to the outer corridor to await his escort back to the lower chambers. He sat down against the wall, legs stretched out, head tipping back against the cold stone. He did not mean to stay. He certainly did not expect company. But Seraphine appeared at the corridor's end, dismissing her last attendant with a gesture so subtle it was almost invisible. She walked slowly, as though the silence of the hall was something she was navigating rather than inhabiting. And then, in a moment that would be spoken of in hushed tones for years by the few sentinels who witnessed it, the Queen of the Etherean realm sat down beside the human envoy. Not on a throne, not on a dais, on the floor. Cale looked at her. She did not look back. "You should rest," he said carefully. "You've been in those chambers as long as I have." "Queens do not rest," she said. But her voice, for the first time all day, had lost its edge. It was quieter, younger. "Everyone rests," Cale said simply, and leaned his head back against the wall again. The hall breathed around them. Somewhere deep in the crystal ceiling, a light pulsed slow and blue like a heartbeat. Kale was not sure exactly when it happened. He only knew that at some point, the weight against his left shoulder increased slightly. He turned his head and found Queen Seraphine, the most feared sovereign in the known world, the woman before whom generals wept and armies scattered, asleep. Her white braided head rested against his armored shoulder, her diamond crown still perfectly placed, her face utterly, devastatingly peaceful. The sentinels at the far end of the corridor had seen it happen. None of them moved. None of them breathed. They had never once seen their queen sleep. They had not been certain she could. Kale sat very, very still. He did not move his shoulder. He did not make a sound. He simply sat with the weight of her trust, accidental and enormous, and watched the crystal light pulse above them. He thought about what it must be like to be her. To carry a kingdom in your chest since childhood. To have everyone around you terrified, because terror was the only language they knew to express the distance between you and them. To be so powerful that no one had ever once simply sat beside you. He stayed until her breathing deepened fully, and then a little longer. When the attendants finally came, creeping wide-eyed, barely daring to move, Kale raised one finger to his lips. They stopped. He nodded once toward the queen. Let her sleep. They obeyed a human's gesture. Perhaps because in that moment, he was the only one in the Frostborn court who was not afraid of her. And somehow she had known that, even in her sleep. When she woke 2 hours later, she sat up straight, adjusted her crown, and looked at him with those pale, unreadable eyes. "This never happened," she said. Kale almost smiled. "Of course not, Your Majesty." But they both knew it had. And it was the first crack in the glacier, the beginning of something neither world had words for yet.